Hello, today I want to talk about the Uber driver campaign, specifically as it relates to their 180 days of change. So the campaign, which ended in November, has been pretty active in the news cycle. There's been a former CEO stepping down. The board's been very active with this campaign to improve basically the brand and the driver experience simultaneously. And Dara, their new CEO, is definitely continuing efforts both internally and externally to focus on the customer experience. And this particular campaign of 180 Days of Change is relating to the driver experience. So in terms of the agenda, I want to cover the campaign goal, the initiative timeline, campaign execution, social media piece, what were the results, and definitely some of the key learnings. So if we look at why Uber was doing the 180 Days of Change, they started off with polling their drivers. And what they announced was that we heard you, you told us what you want, and it's time we step up and give you the driving experience you deserve. And so they advertised that in-app on their website, and then they started creating categories of some of the things that they think would relate to the driver experience. So it started day 1 in June, and it went to day 180, which ended in November. And so the analysis of this campaign basically was the 180 days, a monthly change theme. These improvements would be rolled out city by city, and the drivers could actually see the campaign progress through the Uber in-app driver messaging, and then also targeted emails and certainly on the website, and particularly social media was the plan, and campaign to help mitigate churn and negative PR through this driver experience was definitely the focus. So we look at what were those campaigns. Well, it started in June, and the 180 days on the right, you'll see the in-app that the drivers were starting getting message, and also online. And so in June, you would see tipping, you would see destinations counting toward promos, paid wait time, 2-minute cancellation window, access to boost earnings, a couple of things as it relates to earnings. And then in July, we move again on the right, you would see the in-app advertisement and also some of the things on their website. And you would see a 24/7 phone support, quick fare fixes, faster document reviews. That would be to become a driver and some of the other things. And the Greenlight Hub appointment scheduling as well, which are the brick and mortar for Uber. And then you move into, and that was the support enhancements. And then in August, they talked about promoted flexibility. So drivers would be notified if somebody was scheduling a ride 45 minutes or greater. The arrival times for destinations would be inside. There'd be trip type preferences that they could work with, and then friendlier acceptance rates. September, we moved to pool, and there was messaging out there for flat fares and the additional pickup stops, and they would start educating the riders, give on-time reminders, the ability for riders to give feedback within the pool itself, straighter routes to make it more efficient for the driver, certainly safer stops, and then suggested corner pickups for them to be more efficient. Earnings were the focus in October, and definitely extra long pickups, they would earn more, cancellations, they would earn more, higher rates on wait times, and then there was a lot of worrying about tolls previously, and then this was another way for them to earn without having to worry about that. And then we move into November, which was pickups and ratings, and there was live rider locations, and there was some partnering with like Snapchat and some other companies where you could get a better idea of where these riders were, better understanding of who they were, so in terms of who they were picking up, reminding the riders when, if you're a driver, that you're waiting for them, definitely a notice on scheduling the tips, definitions for our riders, giving clear feedback from the riders if you didn't get tips, good tips, and then a more balance in ratings from riders as well. And so I go over all these things because huge deal, ton of initiative, a lot of stuff that Uber's doing and rolling out. And then how did that relate in terms of their social media? So first, let's break it down. So if you look at the platforms that they have, they specifically use Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And on the right, you can see a breakdown. About 88% of their followers, if you will, are on Facebook. And certainly they may overlap, but you have Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram represent a very small piece of the portion. However, if you look, there's 16 million Facebook followers, about 855,000 Twitter, almost 700,000 on LinkedIn, and 640,000 on Instagram. But what's interesting is Twitter had the most posts, right? So half of the posts on LinkedIn versus what they did on Instagram, and that was only at 584, and very few posts on LinkedIn, and nothing that had to do with the campaign. And then if you look at Facebook, while they did have consistent Facebook content, there was very little visibility, particularly as it relates to the 180 days hashtag, 180 days of change and the usage, and some mixtures of different hashtags, which had to do with basically driver experience. And you'll see that represented here as an example as hashtag where too. So if we look at some of the social posting examples that Uber did. So on the left, you can see somebody who works for Uber that was like, hey, that's very exciting. We're sharing articles that TechCrunch did about us. And they used hashtag 180 days of change. On the other piece, you can see the hashtag usage as well, which was somebody posting from Uber to talk about tips. And these are just some of the examples. One was in July, one was in August. And then in terms of their Twitter, here's what's interesting about their Twitter. You can notice the top two, actually 3 out of the 4 quadrants used link 180 days to shorten their link, but no hashtag usage. And only one had a hashtag usage, and it was tip, tip, hooray. And what's interesting is all 4 of those had to do with the 180 Days of Change campaign, and really not a lot of congruity in terms of the original posting, original campaign and what they were trying to post and how that relates in terms of a hashtag in a campaign. So these are some other examples that Uber used as far as inconsistent social posting, right? So it's a mixture of LinkedIn, bottom left, top, and then some other stuff, right? So you've got Twitter, and then you also have Facebook, and then there wasn't any Instagram. I purposely left Instagram out because it was more visual, very little hashtag usage, more just art looking type posts, very little engagement in terms of a campaign. You would see more like buildings and cars and scenery and landscapes and stuff like that. So really nothing to engage their base and or specifically to engage their driver. But again, you look at some of these things, and one, you don't see the 180 days hashtag. 2, you see different hashtag usage and or shortening their link to something. And what we're looking at here is like in August, the 180 days was flexibility in terms of the campaign, but on social media, they highlighted tipping. And then they also talked about their new CEO arrival, Dara, which you can see in the top right and the bottom left. And then September, the 180 days was pool, but again, pretty distracted from the London vote to remove Uber, and mostly some posts around college football and some of the things on the Emmys. And then in October, another example here in terms of their posting would have been delivering new ways to earn. However, no real Twitter presence, again, with the 180 Days of Change hashtag or anything engaging content, and mostly focused in October on the World Series and, of course, Halloween. And what we did find is that there were definitely examples of negative social posting using the 180 Days of Change. So we won't go into all of them, but here's 6 examples of whether it was drivers engaging Lyft drivers and groups in Milwaukee of Lyft and Uber, or just in general tagging Uber and Lyft with 180 Days of Change. But all these are examples of just really negative. You're a terrible company, no filter. Why aren't you helping? You're taking this away, and et cetera, right? And then here's another example of social media posts using the hashtag as well. So one on the left, you can see some of the apps, the in-app messaging that somebody posted, a screenshot of saying, hey, we used to have 6 destinations, we're taking them away. And then a couple of things that went viral on the left and the middle and the right in terms of, how do I get bonus? Again, 180 days of change, just saying very negative examples of the context of social media, particularly as it relates to that hashtag 180 days of change. And so if you take all of that, what was the overall campaign analysis? So a couple things stood out. One, very ineffective reach to impact brand sentiment from consumers or driver perspective. Definitely sporadic content, rarely highlighting the exact driver experience and the improvements that they're rolling out. Thirdly, they did not use key and consistent messaging across all their platforms, addressing these significant changes. And then fourth, you didn't see them proactively reach out each month to their drivers or their base. And then finally, many of the social media platforms were more fire drills in terms of their engagement, reacting to negative perception. So what would the recommendations be? What were the key learnings? Based on the key learnings, what our recommendations would be, a couple of things. Number one, focus on one hashtag. So we know that hashtag 180 Days of Change was super important. That's the one that we should focus on, that driver experience, not some of the other things that you saw, not link shortening, etc. Also create key and engaging content, support each of these monthly improvements. There were significant changes that we covered earlier, which should have been significantly highlighted. And then third, you would want to engage on all of your social media platforms consistently, which we didn't see. The other recommendation would be, in terms of the drivers, encourage your drivers to post based on your positive changes that you're doing. Reach out to those the highlight riders that are posting, responding positively to the content. And then finally, fully commit to the 6 months, constantly tying back the why, which is really what you're doing to improve the driver experience. And if Uber would have done some of those things, the key learnings that we covered here, they would have had certainly a more successful campaign. And certainly it would be interesting to see how their churn went and how the driver experience, and maybe measuring before and after in terms of the experience. But in general, this would be a better way of staying consistent, staying engaged with key content, and then using those social media platforms consistently. And that is the 180 Days of Change analysis.